Do you want to create more Instagram Reels but get stuck on what to post? I hear you. That's why I'm excited to share our new free resource, the Reels Prompt Playbook for ChatGPT. This playbook includes 20 ready-to-use AI prompts for Reels hooks and captions and makes it super easy to create trendy content that grabs attention without spending endless hours scrolling Instagram for inspiration. Whether you want to share behind the scenes, offer quick tips, or tap into the latest trends, the Reels Prompt Playbook has you covered. Download your free Reels Prompt Playbook at DIY.ai/Reels. And the best part, these ChatGPT prompts are designed to work for entrepreneurs in any industry. Plus, you can pair these prompts with any trending audio or any video that you find on your phone. Basically, they're super easy, super quick, and will keep your content super authentic while saving you loads of time and headache. Grab your free playbook now at DIY.ai/Reels and start showing up on Instagram consistently today.
I had to write something about a product and there was like 500 product reviews. I copied and pasted about 100 of those reviews into GPT-4 and I said, hey, go through these reviews and create me a sentiment analysis, which for humans, for me to print out 100 reviews and to hold them in my head, it's impossible. You can't do it. For these models, it's super easy. So like within seconds, they come back and say, okay, here are the positives, here are the negatives. And then I'll say, okay, what terms and phrases do happy customers typically use when they're expressing their satisfaction with this product? And it'll come back with, okay, here are the terms and words. So then what I do is I fall back on my copywriting training where you try to mirror the language of your audience.
Welcome to Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs, the podcast that shows you how to leverage the power of AI technology without wasting your time or selling your soul. Let's embrace making AI work for you. Hey, my human friend, and welcome to Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Kinsey, and today, oh man, I was nerding out in this conversation with today's guest. His name is Nick, and we were chatting about how you can mix artificial intelligence and emotional intelligence to really make sure that your brand maintains that unique human essence that helps us stand out wherever we are showing up online, that really helps us to connect with our audience on that deeper level and build the know, like, and trust factor. He shared lots of awesome tips, and we actually even talked about like the future of AI and what that's going to look like for our society and our culture, especially with ChatGPT 4.0 coming out and the multimodal stuff. Oh man, I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I did. And if you do, make sure that you share this episode with another business buddy who could also use to listen to it. And while you're at it, why not leave us 5 stars or a friendly review on whatever podcast platform you are listening on, because it really does help us to continue growing our Authentic AI community and just spreading that Authentic AI message. All right, let's go ahead and dive right in. Hi, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's fun to be here. I love talking about this stuff.
Oh, yes, me too. If you can't tell, we're about to get nerdy. It's going to be fun. But before we dive into that, I did introduce you just a little bit in the intro, but I'd love to hear from you. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Me? Well, by trade, I'm a copywriter, and I've been copywriting since 1979. So just a single career my whole adult life. So I'm totally a writing nerd. I really like to write simply, like just everyday language, which is actually incredibly hard. I know it sounds like the easy side, but it's actually not. It's easy to do the complicated writing, but harder to do the simple. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I love to write. I've probably written every day since I started. So I enjoy writing.
Yes. Oh, man. And I was chatting with you before we hit record. I have been a word nerd my entire life as well. But I do like to kick off these conversations by just asking you, how did you start dipping your toes into the world of AI? What did that look like for you?
I think I dipped my toe into that original launch. When was it? November 2022 of ChatGPT, which is 3.5, that first public model. I dived into that within the first 24 or 48 hours. I'm obsessed by the new stuff. I'm not a technology person, but I'm fascinated by technology. I heard about this thing and I just tried it and it completely blew me away. It wasn't my first interaction with AI. I'd used AI in chatbot development like maybe 5-6 years ago. And back then it was very complicated to connect with and interact with any kind of artificial intelligence. Very limited, made my brain hurt really hard. And then along comes ChatGPT and it just completely blew my mind. I remember the day when I first started just interacting with it. And we take it for granted now, but to have something that you can just talk to was just unbelievable. And the quality of the output, mind-blowing. So like I said, I think I started within 48 hours of the launch and I just didn't stop because I was just so amazed and fascinated by this. And it's so easy for us now to take it for granted. But any kind of application before that, like software, is that you write code and you put it in, and then the code has to be exactly correct. And you always get exactly the same output because that's how code is. Even on my keyboard, if I press Shift D, I get a capital D every time. And it's the only way to get a capital D. So that's been our experience with any kind of software. But this is different. You can ask something so many different ways and you get so many different kind of replies. And it really is conversational. So I've been fascinated just ever since by this whole process and watching as it grows and develops and stumbles, makes mistakes.
Oh my gosh, totally. It's so funny to me. I just chuckle every time I hear about AI giving out weird answers or making a mistake or something. It really is fun, the unpredictability of it. And it's been really interesting to see how people come to use it, right? I do feel like to use these tools, you do have to have somewhat developed conversational skills, right? Which is just really funny. And I've also found that people who tend to be using it in a more strategic way and getting better results from it, not feeling frustrated with it necessarily, are the people who also understand what it's like to work with a team member and maybe be in charge and give instruction in that way. Have you noticed anything like that?
Yeah, it took me a while because most of our experience with any kind of software to be very structured in our input. And then I suddenly realized that I can treat this as a collaborator. I can go back and forth. So I used to just give instructions. And I remember it probably took me a couple of weeks to get there for me to actually type in, hang on, what do you think? Which again, you would never do with traditional software. And it took me a while to think, hey, I can do this. I can say, what do you think? And it came back with stuff. I'd ask, hey, what am I missing here? Or I'd ask for, hey, give me 10 headlines for this topic. And it would. And I'd say, okay, now give me 10 non-obvious topics for this post or whatever. I'd specifically ask for non-obvious. And it did. And it's this back and forth, this collaboration where I think the magic happens. I think if you just do straight prompts, 10-word prompt, please create this. I think a lot of people, that's the easy button approach. Write me 500 words on the health benefits of jogging and boom. Or tell me 7 must-see attractions in New York City. And it just pumps this stuff out. And that's the kind of easy button. And I think a lot of people take that route. But there's a kind of flatness and a kind of sameness there, which I don't think is a great idea. And particularly if you're a small company and a small business, your most valuable asset as a brand is you, all right? So for instance, I use these models a lot, but for my own blog on my own website, when I write blog posts, I don't use it at all. I may use it for a bit of brainstorming, like some ideation, some coming up with ideas. But when it comes to writing the blog post on my own website, I write it myself completely because it has to be me. My brand is me. I can't have some generic kind of writing on there written by ChatGPT. I mean, I could, and some people do, but I wouldn't. I call this the sameness trap. If you have a small business and you start using the same models like GPT-4 and you're using the same prompt libraries, and maybe you're using the same template libraries, inevitably the output is going to sound the same. You fall into the sameness trap, which from a marketing point of view is the opposite of what you want to do. You can't afford to sound the same. You've got to sound unique. So it's not a love-hate. It's just there's a way to use this tool that's the easy button and I don't think gives you great output. And then there's the way to say, hang on, let's think about this a bit more and be more collaborative and treat this as a team member. And then you can get some much more interesting stuff. And sometimes knowing when is the time to not use it and to use your own writing style so that people know you and recognize your voice.
Yes. We agree with everything you just said on this podcast over here, Authentic AI. You know, I always really find it so interesting to like research, how can we get the most unique responses out of this tool? Like, how can those people who care about not losing their authenticity and their brand's uniqueness, how can we use these tools in the best way to boost our productivity without sacrificing that authenticity, right? And so, yeah, I've developed a few different prompting techniques that, one, for sure, is like generic prompts equal generic results. We need to dive deeper than that, guys. I love to brain dump a lot within my prompts, right? I have methods for training ChatGPT on my specific brand voice and my knowledge. Have you been wanting to add AI tools to your business, but you're feeling overwhelmed by all the options? I feel you. There are so many AI tools out there, it's hard to know which ones work well and which ones will work for you. That's why I'm excited to introduce our new free resource, the Authentic AI Tech Toolkit. This is our thoughtfully curated library of tried and tested AI tools that are specifically recommended for solopreneurs like you. From everyday business tasks like organizing and automating to content creation, video editing, copywriting, and more, our Authentic AI Tech Toolkit is dishing up recommendations for tools that our community has been loving to use in their business and lives. Gain access for free right now at DIY.ai/toolkit and go find those AI tools that will be super helpful for you and your business. Ready to find AI tools that are perfect for you and start making your tasks and to-dos a little easier? Simply head to DIY.ai/toolkit to sign up for free right now. And so that's all super, super helpful. And then at the same time, have I ever copy pasted something from ChatGPT into any piece of content that I'm actually putting out into the world? Not to date. I've at least changed, a few words or one sentence here or there. But it's really hard to get those unique responses that sound like your brand. So how do you go about working with ChatGPT to get the most unique responses for you?
A couple of ways. One is, and you alluded to it, like in terms of giving it context. So I'll usually create very long prompts and I'll say, okay, here's who you are. I want you to speak as an expert on such and such. Here's a description of your audience and here's some context. The context may be in part a description of a product or service, if that's what it's about. But the context can also be, here are 5 examples of where I've written about something similar in the past, or 5 examples of my voice, or 5 examples on this topic. So I'll give it examples to work with. So I might be pasting in a prompt of 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 words. And if that's for a project or for a client that I'm going to come back to, I will save that prompt so I can just copy and paste it next time and maybe make a small change to it. So I give it a lot of information. The other thing I do is, and this is a deliberate step, and I call it F plus EI. So that's artificial intelligence plus emotional intelligence. These models, they understand what human emotion is. They've read the script to Love Story and Romeo and Juliet. They have this secondhand experience of emotion and feeling. But it's always secondhand. It's always reported. GPT can't fall in love. It can't taste ice cream. It can't feel the sand between its toes on the beach. There are these sensory experiences, emotional experiences that we have as humans that they can read about, but they can't feel. And sometimes the difference is subtle, but it's very real because as humans, we're very attuned to the nuances, the subtleties of emotion. So sometimes I will, and also when I'm prompting, I don't just do one prompt and done. I'll say, okay, but again, lead more with benefits and not with features or stuff. And it does that. Okay, let's open with an anecdote or a little story at the beginning. So I do this iterative process in prompting. So I do the long form prompt with lots of context. Then I'll go step by step until I get close to what I want. So I was doing this a while ago and I said, okay, start with the story. And it was something to do with conference marketing. And the story it came up with, I thought, actually, that's not so dissimilar from something that actually happened to me. So I rewrote that opening with my own story. And because it was mine, and it was like an embarrassing moment where I forgot someone's name at a conference, like someone I'd met 20 times that I completely blanked on their name. And it was very different because it was my story and it was real. And I think people could empathize with it because I think we've all forgotten somebody's name at an event or a party or whatever. It's part of being a messy human. And these models are not messy. They may hallucinate, they may make mistakes, but they don't have that kind of messy human touch, which we like. We like people's imperfections and their vulnerabilities and their little, eccentricities. It's what makes someone interesting to us. and it makes a story more engaging. So I really lean into emotional intelligence. A lot of that is about listening to your audience and really understanding them before you write to them. And the other part is empathizing, to having true empathy for the people you're writing to. Can these models do it? To a point, but not all the way. So I try to get the very best I can out of AI, but I always, at the end, I sit back and think, okay, how can I layer in the messy human part, the emotional intelligence part into this to make it unique and to make it more engaging to human readers?
Yes. Oh, I love that. And yeah, I know that's something that I keep reminding people too, because stories and storytelling is really just such an important part of our culture. It can be used in your business for so many things in so many ways and just boost your brand. And that is the one thing that these artificial intelligence assistants for our businesses can't know about us. Can it dish up like all the different facts and all the different stuff? Yes, for sure. But it doesn't know our own lived experiences and our clients' lived experiences. And so I always remind my students, interject these experiences into your content and layer that with whatever you're having ChatGPT help you with. How else do you work with these tools to help you boost the emotional intelligence in your content?
So if I go back to listening to your audience and understanding them and empathizing with an audience, I can use these models to help me do that. I keep saying GPT-4, but it could be Gemini, it could be Claude 3, it could be whatever your favorite model is. I had to write something about a product the other day, and the product was for sale, retail, but it was also for sale on Amazon. And there was like 500 product reviews. I copied and pasted about 100 of those reviews for the product. I pasted them into GPT-4 and I said, hey, go through these reviews and create me a sentiment analysis of these buyers, which for humans, for me to print out 100 reviews and to hold them in my head, it's impossible. You can't do it. For these models, it's super easy. They're really good at big data analysis. So like within seconds, they come back and say, okay, here are the positives, here are the negatives. And it's 75% positive. And then I'll say, okay, tell me the language. What terms and phrases do happy customers typically use when they're expressing their satisfaction with this product? And it'll come back with, okay, here are the terms and words that happy customers use. So then what I do is I fall back on my copywriting training where you try to mirror the language of your audience. So if you say something to me and I get back to you and I use very similar language or the same language, you immediately feel, hey, he was listening to me. I feel heard. And so now you're paying more attention. So if you've ever been to therapy and you say, oh, I feel that people at work don't take me seriously, the therapist comes back and says, I hear you saying that people at work don't take you seriously. The therapist is just repeating what you said. And on the face of it, it's weird and maybe slightly irritating, but actually it's very powerful because it is that moment of, oh, I'm being heard. Someone's listening to me, which is very strong. I find the positive sentiment using a tool like GPT-4. I grab the language and then I'll help. So, and sometimes I'll go to the next stage and I'll say, okay, write me a sales email for this product using the language happy customers in that email. Is it always perfect? No, it isn't. I have to go in and edit and change and stuff, but it does use the language. It does start mirroring the language of happy customers. There, what I'm doing is I'm going for the sentiment, I'm going for the emotion, but I can actually use these models to get me along the way, asking it to do stuff like do a sentiment analysis, give me a sentiment analysis document on this, which for humans is really hard. For these models, is really simple. So yeah, it's like the interaction, and you were saying it right at the very beginning, of this being a collaborative experience rather than a traditional software experience where you type in the command and you expect perfect output. It should be collaborative. It should be iterative. It should be feeling back and forth and going draft by draft.
Yeah. Oh, I love that analysis of the sentiment with reviews. I could totally see people doing this as well with like social media captions, things within Facebook groups. But that makes so much sense to me and it's so smart. I love it. I have definitely been using ChatGPT to like brainstorm relatable moments for my ideal customers, doing ideal customer research. And it's hilarious. Whenever I have ChatGPT, like what's like an eye roll moment or what's a moment during the day where a down-to-earth solopreneur will find a chuckle, you know?
Right.
Or like self-deprecating humor really works for my brand for whatever reason. And I always like the responses ChatGPT throws back at me. I'm like, you get me, ChatGPT. I'm like, yes, I've done that. You know, it's hilarious. But it is funny to really think about how can we use these tools to incorporate some of that emotional intelligence. And also, I do feel like that's one of those things that is hard to pinpoint for a lot of people. It feels like emotional intelligence or just like connecting with people on that emotional level, sometimes it's hard for them to really define it and see it. And so having these tools to help us is really awesome.
It's so important at every level, like in how we interact with our customers, how we interact with our partners, how we interact with clients, if we have clients, as well as in how we write to audiences. I've done talks on this where I've stood up in front of an audience and I said, okay, how many of you think you have above average emotional intelligence? And almost everyone in the room puts their hand up. We all like to think. And I'm like, no. As in, for the most part, we're horrible at this. For the most part, we're horrible listeners. We're like, are you a good listener? Sure, I am. You're probably not. Like me, what happens is we get into conversation and the other person starts talking. And sometimes you get that feeling of that the person isn't really listening to you. They're waiting for you to stop so they can carry on what they want to say. All right. I'm not that bad, but I know I've done that, like waiting for you, like not even hearing, filtering out what they're saying, unless they're agreeing with me. And we're not terribly emotionally intelligent. But when I weave emotional intelligence into my use of AI, I like the fact that it forces me to try to get better in my writing, in my interaction with partners and clients, and even with customers. I think AI is a superpower, but I think emotional intelligence is also a superpower. Both of them are areas where we can improve. I love that. Cognitive intelligence, the intelligence test you took as a kid, is generally fixed for life. But emotional intelligence, you can take a test to gauge your emotional intelligence and you can improve on that by working on it. So to me, it's a fun dance, this AI plus EI, because one is like all technology and the other is all emotion.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So somewhat of a side note, but this conversation is spurring the thoughts on the new ChatGPT 4.0. And it's supposed to be a little bit more emotionally intelligent, or at least attuned to emotions. And then with the voice and kind of live video interaction model and stuff, I have not gotten access to it yet. So I can't wait to try it out whenever I do. But it's interesting. There's been lots of conversations about people saying, oh, this is like the Her movie with like Joe Phoenix, or he fell in love with the AI. And they're like, I heard someone else say, oh, the new model of ChatGPT is like flirty. You know, it's going to make all your boyfriends and husbands fall AI or something. That was like kind of a radical-ish more person. But it's really interesting, though. I wonder if it could possibly become, I think that there's two sides to every coin, of course. And so I do think that this is going to be helpful for people in a lot of ways. And also it could potentially become a little problematic. I don't know. It's so interesting to see all of this unfold with our culture and society. Do you have any thoughts as far as that stuff?
I am, we've been talking about it and I'm all enthusiastic and excited, but I'm equally excited and I'm horrified. I'm excited and I'm terrified. It's like really, I truly am. Because like you said, that multimodal part of GPT 4.0, where it can look at your face through your camera and recognize your emotions on your face, is great, but it's creepy. It's fun in demo, but then if you use a little imagination, say, hang on, what if a policeman had that and held it up in front of my face and the AI told him that I was lying? And maybe that's a false positive. So yeah, it's very exciting. But I think to a large part, we have choices. We can choose how to use this. And I guess some people will make not great choices about how to use it, but it's up to us. And it's fascinating because of this, like you said, duality. There's both sides of the same coin. But I think that's something to keep in mind, even as we use it for our businesses and for a social and whatever it is we do. Just as a mindset, we keep ourselves in the driver's seat. I'm the boss of this. And that, because I can see this gets more and more advanced and it can look at you through a camera on a web or something and it can recognize your emotions. These models can be very persuasive, very manipulative. They've read every piece of fiction. They've read every movie script. They really are naturally, they can be very manipulative. And we have to be aware of that. We have to try to stay in the driver's seat and say, hey, I'm the boss of this. I can turn this off when I want. Whether we do or not, who knows? If we look at the example of social media, which I know you enjoy and I enjoy, but it used to be very different at the beginning. And now it's much more corporate and controlled and pay as you go and stuff like that. And also there can be a lot of negative emotion in social media. I do think we need to be self-aware in our use of AI, and we need to be aware that it can go off in negative directions. We just have to be mindful of that and stay in the driver's seat and use it in a more positive way.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. It's something that we need to continue reminding ourselves.
Yes.
My audience probably hears me say that on quite a few episodes again and again. I'm always like, guys, listen to it again. You need to hear it again, because it's so easy to get swept up in the snowball of this machine is very confident. This tool is telling me the right answers. This tool gets me. All these different things. And you need to constantly be filtering yourself, filtering the responses that it's throwing your way, making sure that you always have that human element, that human touch, that objective viewpoint. You step back from it and take a look at what's happening in front of you. I love that you related it to social media too, because I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And I think that's why my original brand that I've been building for 5 years now is Feel Good Social. And it's taking the easygoing, aligned approach to social media, recognizing that there's good things and there's bad things, setting boundaries for yourself, making it work for you in a way that aligns with you. And then for the past year, our sister brand now, Authentic AI, is taking that same approach to AI. I think that's why I feel so passionate about this stuff too, is because I do see those similarities. And it's really about making sure that we're just having these conversations and being able to be involved in the conversations that are shaping our future, being self-aware, spreading the word about awareness, and really just trying to work together to choose how we want to use these tools as a culture together too.
I love your brand, Feel Good Social. It's because, again, it expresses a choice. And I've always been in what I try to do, take the positive side of the coin, that positivity, just that kindness, a smile, a moment of, it's so powerful and it's so generous and it brings good into the world. So I'm getting all waxing lyrical here, but there is a choice of like, am I going to express feeling good or am I going to express fear? Some marketers are all about fear. You're going to miss out. My goodness, it's the end of the world. It's the apocalypse. It's like, I try not to do that. I'm much more interested, like to your brand of, you know what, there's a feel good approach to this that is actually going to bring a little bit of light into people's lives. So I try to do the same with AI. Like I'm fascinated and impressed and terrified by its capabilities, but I do try to stay in the driver's seat and weave in the emotional intelligence, the human, the messy human side. And also I want to exercise human judgment on the output. I'm the boss. I'm going to decide whether is this me? Is this my voice? Is this a feel good expression or am I being overly negative? Like I can apply, is human judgment in the end because is the boss. So you got to stay in control of it because otherwise it can be, it already is. It's everywhere and it's going to be very powerful.
Yes. And not just for yourself and also spreading this message to the people in your life as well. That's what I keep telling people is I'm like, you know, guys, we need to hear this. And also I'm telling my mom about AI tools every day. And I'm telling the lady at the grocery store about it. I'm like, you know, having these conversations because this is like just rolling out to our society on a whole, right? And so I have so loved this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And I know you have some goodies for us. Can you tell us how people can connect with you and find all the Authentic AI goodies that you have for us?
Sure. So if you go to nickusborne.com, and that's NICKUSBORNE.com, you'll find my blog there, my socials there. But if you go to nickusborne.com/authentic, you'll find I've put together a little choice of goodies just for you. And you can download some stuff, sign up for stuff and so on. So have a peek there, nickusborne.com/authentic.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I know Nick has some freebies and a future, what's your course about? Future
It's called Future-Proof Copywriting. So basically it's for copywriters and content writers. And I call it future-proof because AI is wonderful, but some writers are losing their jobs because of AI. So I call it future-proof because it is that blend that we talked about of AI plus emotional intelligence. The emotional intelligence side is how you protect yourself from being replaced by AI because AI can't really do that. It can do emotions in broad strokes, but it can't do the subtleties that we find so attractive as humans.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait to check it out myself. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Nick.
Thank you for inviting me. I love that whole feel-good approach that you have. I think it's super important and adds to the good in the world.
How great was that conversation with Nick? I hope that you gleaned as much information from this conversation as I did. And if you enjoyed this, why not share this episode to your Instagram stories? Make sure that you tag me. I am at Authentic AI for entrepreneurs, because then I will be able to see it, reshare it, and just spread the love back to you over there. All right. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll catch you next time I catch you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Authentic AI for Entrepreneurs, my friend. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your shows.